Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the next episode of the Getting Uncomfortable podcast. I am your host, Eric Uresk, and today I'm here with probably the person in the world that makes me the most uncomfortable, um, my wife, Azimah, and so she'll be on the show regularly because we have our whole relationship is really revolves around being uncomfortable and growing together in that uncomfortability, and we think it's really valuable to share with you guys. So I'll let Azima introduce herself, but before I do that, she is a movement instructor. She teaches people how to move and develop better relationships with their body. She is a personal trainer. She helps people with weight loss and all kinds of physical improvements, and she has been on her own journey of self-discovery for the past few years now, and that's kind of what we're going to dive into today. But yeah, Azima, I'll let you kind of tell people what you do and kind of what you're all about these days.
These days, I'm all about the whole movement training. I train people in the areas of strength, flexibility, and control, and also like to dive into not just the physical aspects of training, but also the mental and emotional aspects
Mm,
of training and how movement itself can be healing. Movement can be medicine, just
sure.
as I've experienced it working for me myself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you feel that the emotional side of training is probably the thing that's like most ignored?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so. I feel like sometimes people use training as a way to also distract themselves from their emotions, but not so much as a tool to really dive deeper
Mm,
into their emotions or even help them self-regulate. In my case, when I was struggling with depression or anxiety, I use movement as a tool to help me get out of those states that aren't very productive, right?
right. Sometimes, yeah. If I'm in a real bad spot mentally, the worst thing I can do oftentimes is nothing,
Yeah.
right? And so a lot of times, just some slow movement to sort of break that inertia is really, really helpful in changing my physiology and then therefore kind of changing my mind state.
I've done some deeper research on this thing called the polyvagal theory by
Sure.
Stephen Porges, and in there it talks about your fight or flight responses and also your freeze and shutdown responses. And
Mm,
when that happens to you, you can always, find ways to kind of get out of those states in order to be in a more, um, I would say, parasympathetic, but able to socially engage with other people. So you're
mm,
not an asshole to your friends and family around you. So you're not, um, so you're able to, for example, in a jujitsu setting, right? I'm able to play and roll with my partners without trying to kill them, and it's out of my control. You
yeah,
know
so
what I
you're
mean?
not acting out of survival.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know what you're doing. You're conscious
Mhm.
of what you're doing. You're not just sort of freaking out
Yes.
and reacting and responding
Or shutting down.
or shutting down.
Or
Yeah.
shutting down, not like taking in the information or not
Mm.
being able
Yeah,
to
that happens
learn.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the spaz out or the freeze,
Mhm.
right? And so, yeah, I think that's really important stuff. And I think we'll touch on that in the future is polyvagal theory and
Mhm.
fight or flight and, all of that
Ah,
stuff.
it's
We,
so
we both
juicy.
have a lot of experience with dealing with that stuff. So, for the listeners that don't know us, our relationship is it's unique in its own way. I'm sure everybody's relationship is unique, but we are obviously, um, we're interracial. We are interfaith, right? So Azima was raised in a traditional Muslim home.
Mhm.
I was not.
No.
Right? Azima is from originally Singapore and comes from a Malay family.
Uh-huh.
And so our relationship and her family sort of getting used to the idea of me not fitting into any of those sort of traditional roles, and sort of the journey that we've had with that has been quite interesting.
Yeah, I would agree so.
Yeah. So tell the listeners like what that experience was like for you. Um, you know, breaking a lot of traditional sort of um, traditional roles that were laid down for you, just rules and things that you sort of kind of went against the grain?
Well, in the beginning, I was very hesitant on breaking those rules
Mm.
just because that is something that I always grew up with, or I was told to believe from a
Mhm.
young age, right? You grow up and then you see all these adults telling you how you should live your life and who are the people that you should be around, who
Mm.
you should love, who you should, um, share your toys with or whatever, right? And then I've always, growing up, I went to, you know, I guess your equivalent of Sunday school, where, we learn about the religion and Islam and stuff like that. And a lot of things were cool, but what I didn't really agree with was, how some of my friends who were not Muslim, like they were saying those who are not Muslim will not go to, you know, heaven or
Mhm.
whatever. And for me, it didn't really make sense. And I grew up, from child care, not child care, kindergarten to like primary school and secondary school. I was always around different races, different
Mhm.
religions, and they were all like good friends of mine. So I didn't really understand that.
Mm.
It wasn't until I got older and started kind of like really, really questioning those things. Actually, when I met you,
Mhm.
that I started questioning these things because you opened up these conversations of like um, me being honest with myself and what I really, really, truly believed. I had to peel back the layers and actually, find that out myself.
Yeah, I
You
think
know.
it's for a lot of people, maybe for most people, like we get given our beliefs and our values, and a lot of times they're not questioned, right? It's
Mhm.
just like, this is what I believe. I'm not sure why I believe what I believe,
Mhm.
but I'm gonna believe it, and it never gets questioned.
Yeah.
And I always find that fascinating because I've questioned everything since the beginning, and maybe that was just something that was put onto me. But I think it's a gift, and I think it's important to question my own beliefs, to question if they're mine or not. Right? Are
Mhm.
these actually my values, right? Or were these my parents' values,
Mhm.
right? That
Or my
yeah, or
grandparents.
my grandparents. Is somebody trying to force these values onto me,
Yeah.
and not really letting me be who I really am.
Mhm.
And I think that happens a lot, and I don't think it's just from parents. I think it could be cultural. I
Yeah.
think it can be political. I think it can be all different kinds of ways. Um, and people get stuck living lives that aren't their own to please other people.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you didn't want to do that.
No, especially I have to talk a little bit about what happened that actually forced me to
Sure.
confront those beliefs. I would say it was when we broken up,
Hmm.
and then I had hit a point in my life where I hit rock bottom and had to kind of rebuild my life from scratch. Just
Yeah.
come to a place where I had to destroy everything I thought I knew about myself and find that version of myself that I never met before.
Yeah, and
That
for
I
the
wanted to meet.
listeners, and we'll get into this, but both Azima and I are both recovered love and sex addicts, right? So we have struggled with addictions with love and sex, and we'll get into what that maybe looks like and how can you be addicted to love or sex,
Mhm.
and it's a pretty fascinating thing, and some of you might find it helpful. So there was a point where uh, in our relationship, I realized I needed to do some healing around some things that I hadn't fully healed. And I realized that she probably had some healing to do as well. And I didn't think that healing was going to happen if we stayed together. I think that we were codependent on one another, and that had we stayed together, there was no healing possible. And so I basically called off our engagement, and I was going to be leaving Thailand soon anyway, and so Azima went home to her parents' house, and with nothing really, and kind of had to start all over and start this journey and getting recovered around this stuff. And I was already in. I've already been in recovery for drugs, alcohol, and sex and love for quite a while, but I still had some healing to do, and uh, and so this is where she hit rock bottom in discovering like, oh wow, like I actually have an addiction, and and
I'm not so perfect
yeah,
after all.
and you had to tell your family about this.
Yeah, that was the first thing I did.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I did, and that was, when I got home, just, broken, and I was like, fuck it, I don't care. I'm just gonna tell my mom all these things, and hopefully she won't kick me out, and she didn't. Like, I remember it was that day. It was a Thursday. I remember I came home. No one was home. I felt so lonely. I just like collapsed on my floor. And then my mom came home by the evening time. No one else had come home before then. And then, she didn't know why I came back from Phuket. But then I told her, Mama, I'm here because I need to get help. I fucked everything up that I had built in Phuket with Eric, and this is me. I'm, getting help for my addiction, and I hope you can support me through this because I don't know, what's gonna happen tomorrow or the next week. I really have no idea, and I have to live in this space of not knowing for a long time. And then for the first time in I don't know how long, I actually felt my mom actually be there for me as a mother.
Sure.
Because like for a really long time, I felt like she has always been pretty emotionally unavailable because I think it was also my part that I always kind of been avoidant. And then, feeling her love and her presence at that moment was kind of like a really, really comforting feeling, kind of like it encouraged me to, keep doing the work and not like turn back, and then that night I went to my first SLA meeting. And yeah, I found even more relief in that.
Yeah, and so if you're listening and you're like, well, how can somebody be addicted to love or sex? So I can best explain it like this. Being a drug addict and a junkie, right? Oftentimes, the best part of the experience is going to buy the drugs, right? There's sort of this fantasy and there's this feeling of like once I get this, everything's going to be okay. And there's a ritual and there's a real high that comes with going to buy dope or going to buy whatever I'm going to buy to feel different. And that's the best part. And that's and this is pretty routine for a lot of people with addiction. It's the romance and the fantasy around it. And then once I actually get high and the high is over, it's immediately followed by just an intense feeling of remorse and despair. Like, I want to die. I can't believe I did it again, right? My soul just feels dead and barren. And oftentimes with a sexual addiction, it's the same thing. It's the build-up, dating apps or whatever, however you're going about this, it's the build-up, it's the chase, it's setting up the scene and fantasizing about how great it's going to be when I get this. It's the feeling of being wanted and all of that, and it's a huge rush. And then you get there and there's and the act happens, and often the act's not the best part, and then when it's over,
You just want more.
there's an internal devastation that happens, and a feeling of being dirty, a feeling of feeling disgusted with oneself.
Yeah, but before that, there's always this delusion that you think you're gonna be
Yeah,
happy.
that this is going to take me to a better place.
And it's always
And
surprising.
it's always amazing that there's a feeling of just utter disgust
Yeah.
and shame and guilt and what's wrong with me. And it's maybe it's just the wrong girl. Maybe I need a different type of girl, different
And then
color
the
girl,
obsession
different
starts
amount
again.
of girls, like, or men or whatever have you, right? For whatever, however you swing. And so that's what it looks like, right? It is and when you're not doing it, if you're an addict, you're obsessing about it 24/7. It pretty much takes over your entire life. And we had this going on while we're engaged. We were very open about it with each other. We had been doing an open relationship type thing, and we had explored that. And but we just realized, like, we, in particular, were just not able to do that in a way that was healthy.
And for me to come home to my mom and tell her all that, was super, super scary
Yeah.
because all my life, anything related to sex or mingling with the opposite sex was like shunned,
Right.
right? So like, you know, I was just I felt super beaten down, not because, well, yes, because I also destroyed my relationships, but um, also because I didn't know how to be in relationships,
Right.
whether with males or females. I
Sure.
didn't know how to have healthy relationships, period, and there was a lot of shame around just that because I
Right.
feel like I've lost like all these years of my life like not knowing how to relate to men and women in like healthy ways, and I saw how that bled not just in like romantic relationships obviously, but also in friendships.
Yeah.
How like growing up I never had really close like best friends,
Right.
how I, yeah, and just never really got to build off a really successful career
Mm.
either, where I had like long lasting clients or
Yeah,
whatever, for
my
example.
obsession would, whether it was drugs, alcohol, or later on like sex, would always overtake my professional pursuits. Like it
Mhm.
was always such a distraction that I could never actually focus on things that were actually going to take me somewhere in the long term. Everything was like immediate gratification, like right here, right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just like, it's like, man, I really don't think I learned how to like function inside of a relationship until like after we were married.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I knew I loved you when we got back together, and we got back together, and we weren't sure that we were going to get back together. But it became abundantly clear once we did reunite in the United States that it's like, okay, we're gonna do this thing together, and it's gonna be fucking rocky. We didn't really realize how rocky it was gonna be,
Mhm.
but because we both still needed a lot of healing at that point.
Yeah.
We had, been on, we had made some strides, but nowhere near where we needed to be. And it's almost like the journey really started there.
Mhm.
And for me, like as we got married, things just got so much harder
Yeah.
because it's like, okay, now I'm with this person, I'm committed to this person. I can't just fucking run away,
Yeah.
right? I can't just shut down and be avoidant and because that's what I would do in all my relationships prior to that. I would meet women.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, I would get them to move from foreign countries to come and be with me. And then when they would come and be with me, I just decided, yeah, this is, I would get so freaked out about the thought of being engulfed by a relationship that I would just leave them cold,
Mhm.
in a foreign country. And I would just go date somebody new. And I thought there was nothing wrong with that. It was just the wrong girl,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so now I couldn't do that. I had brought you to America. I could not just leave you in a foreign country. You know what I mean? Like we had to go through the immigration process, all that stuff, which was pretty stressful.
Yeah. To be fair, like I was also, you know, n- also worried that I was one of those girls that
Right. It's a fair
that was
worry.
in a pattern,
Yeah.
that okay, I did all this work, passed in all the paperwork and all that. What if he decides that no, and then I'm going home?
Yeah.
So that further propelled me into doing the work of like
Yeah.
healing myself,
Uh-huh.
because I don't want a person to become my purpose, right?
Right. And if you can put it into words, what has that work looked like for you?
It started from the first day I came back to Singapore to go into recovery. Was every morning sitting with myself at least 10 minutes in meditation, and then prayer afterward, just to be guided throughout the day, just because I knew that I was powerless over my shit. I didn't know, yeah, I didn't know if that day I went out and then someone talked to me, that I would be properly equipped with the right words to say that will not lead me into the same mess that I've been getting myself into.
Right.
So prayer, meditation, movement,
Uh-huh.
some kind of movement, whether it's a training session, a hit session, a body weight movement session, or just putting on some music and just dancing, feeling myself. And what else? Oh, I put this into like 4 M's: meaning, mastery, mindfulness, and movement. So, meaning was, I would say, the. Oh, wait. Mindfulness would be the the meditation, right? Meaning will be the prayer and talking to the people I love, right? And when I was deeper into recovery, talking to a recovery partner. Mastery is doing something in line with what I want to learn, reading a book, I listened to shit ton of podcasts while I was still in recovery and not wanting to take my mind away on like random shit that could take my mind away further into more obsession.
Because it's that easy.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm not treating my addiction, you know, it's super easy to just like be taken by an obsession, right? A girl smiles at me, and I'm in I'm an obsession. You know, like I have to dominate that. I have to conquer that. You know, and like that's it. I'm obsessed now. With the idea of conquering that woman, or you know, for you, for a man, and so you get, you know, you're doing some work home alone on your own, but it seemed like when we got here, like that's when it really got intense.
Yeah, because it got real.
Uh-huh.
Because I saw you all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it was so much easier to do, I find, to do the healing work when you're isolating yourself.
Right.
You know, at that point when I was in Singapore, I had decided not to pick up a training job or whatever, so I could really, really focus on the work. So 6 days a week, I was usually at home.
Yeah.
Other than going out for the meetings, they had like meetings. I went to meetings like 5 days a week, and then maybe go to a cafe on Sundays. But yeah, I wasn't really around other people other than my family members, which triggered the shit out of me. But it's still not like a relationship,
Right.
right? Until I got to America and met you, and then the triggers start going off like every day, and it's from like a deeper pot.
And what do the triggers look like for the listeners?
What do the triggers look like? Sometimes in, I don't know, your facial expressions, or when you turn away from me, or when we're trying to have a conversation or whatever. So I couldn't really tell you a list because there's just so much,
Right.
You know, and it subconsciously triggers me before I realize it's a freaking trigger.
So yeah, is it more along the lines of like, and what I notice is like, anytime, and it happens to me too, like anytime I show disapproval towards you, or frustration towards you, or annoyance, or I want to be by myself, right? I raise my voice, anything like that. It'd be like, oh, what did I do? Is he gonna, you know? And for me, it'd be the same thing. Any sort of look of displeasure or disagreement or whatever, I'd be like, I'd get angry, but really what I'd get angry at is the fear of abandonment, right? That's what I'm angry at. I'm angry because I'm afraid that this person's going to leave me, because that's all I knew as a child, was just being emotionally abandoned at all points. If I messed up, I was going to be chastised, yelled at, verbally abused, if not physically abused, and that's fucking scary, you know? And then you carry that into all your relationships as an adult, and I wonder why I'm like, you know, like I want to have a relationship so bad, but every time I get in one, I fucking bail. And then it's like, oh, I got to start another one and start this whole pattern over again.
Yeah, and definitely it has to do with my own abandonment issues too. Like when you need your own space to, for example, go hang out with your friends, right? And I'm thinking like, oh shit, he's going out to meet a chick. And also we've had our history of like trying out open relationships, and me not being able to communicate that I'm not okay with something out of fear of you not being okay with me not being okay, and then after that me losing love because I'm not cool with what you're doing, you know? So it got really scary, because I had to let you go and not hold on to you so hard like I did before, because that caused it.
Yeah, I think there were these like really unhealthy periods where like neither of us could communicate what we really wanted out of fear that was going to be rejected by the other person. So instead we would just sort of acquiesce, and you know, not say what we want.
We'll just hope,
and then just hope that the other person magically does it, and then be resentful when it doesn't happen. Right. So it's like, that's a big one for me, is like I have to set boundaries, and that was really hard because when we moved here, like you would freak the fuck out. When I just wanted to go have coffee by myself.
I just moved across the world and not know anyone. And
I'm like, I need alone time. And I understood why you were freaking out, but I was like,
Because you did it in a way that was just so
I just need to be alone. So I'm just like, listen, I have
Like,
to be
bye,
alone.
bitch.
Yeah. And then
And I'm like, what the fuck?
you'd lose your fucking mind. And it was so hard for me because on one hand, I needed that alone time. And on the other hand, I was, terrified that I was going to upset you to the point that I would get abandoned.
Yeah.
And it literally, there was like a lot of work to learn how to like be firm in those boundaries. And then, as time went on, I learned how to do them a little bit better. There's a little bit better ways to communicate those things,
Yeah.
a little bit softer and gentler ways to say, listen, like, let you know that this has nothing to do with you, right? But I need some time alone so that I can process some things that I have going on, and I just enjoy my alone time.
And also listening to my needs and what
Yeah.
I really want.
Yeah.
I don't really want to spend all my waking time with you, but
Right.
it feels like, it felt at the time like you were going to abandon me because I was a burden, because I'm new to this country and didn't know anyone and needed to be driven around everywhere.
Yeah.
So it felt like, yo, what the fuck? Like, I came through and you're just leaving?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So it was like, oh shit, it's my childhood all over again.
Yeah.
All
right. And so, could you explain how, so from that stuff, like that fear of abandonment, like, how did you start to come through that stuff?
How did I challenged it?
Uh-huh.
When those feelings came up, I don't know, I like meditated on it. I would sit still with it and also feel where it was coming up in my body. And I would meditate on it even more and try to find where the source came from, the original story, right? The original story is that, if I'm not in control or around you all the time, that means that you're probably, seeing someone else, and then I'll be abandoned. That means I'm not, you know, the one that you love, or,
Right.
for example. I would say that comes from me finding out that my dad was like cheating on my mom, so there's always that like fear around trusting men, and at a young age, I remember I was like 6 years old in his car. He got a text message. No, he got off a phone with someone and then said, "I love you." And then I thought, I asked him who it was. Normally he wouldn't speak English to my mom, he would speak in Malay. And then he said it was my mom. And then when he left the car, he left his phone on the car. And I looked at his phone and it was not my mom.
Oh no.
So it was the first time like I realized my dad had lied to me. And so like my world just like shattered, So there was always
It's weird when your dad's your hero, right? And then
Yeah.
you find out that they're not perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the time, like that, he was like my main source of love. Because before that, when I was 3 years old, my sister was born. So like I didn't get a lot of the love from my mom either. I felt like I always had to kind of outdo myself to get her attention. And then took my dad away. After that, I was just like, oh no, I need to find this love from someone else. I remember being obsessed about finding a boyfriend and fantasizing about like future relationships when I was like 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah, same thing. Because I wasn't gonna get it at home.
Yeah. So like when that stuff happens, like you pulling away and just disappearing, and then me having this prior experience of also even seeing you with other people before.
Yeah.
Right. Like that was very difficult because that took me back to that story that you're lying to me, you're hiding something from me, and I need to protect myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had a recent breakthrough that I thought was really interesting, like about an old story, about constantly needing to achieve and work and work and work and work, and how it was sort of manifesting was like, energy towards me. And then, you and I sat down and kind of went through it, and it had like nothing to do with me at all.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know. What was that? I was like lashing out on you. I can't remember for what anymore.
Something silly.
Probably something silly. Something you didn't do that I had I wished you read my
I
mind.
hadn't brought you to go get coffee for like 2 times in a row.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I can't drive and I can't go get really good coffee on my own. But yeah, because I felt this uh, need to constantly keep working because I'm pretty still new here and building my business, and I feel like I have to constantly like outdo myself and
Mm.
also impress you,
Mm-hmm.
right? In a way, like impress you, like look at how many clients I got, look how much money I'm bringing home this month because, a couple of months ago I wasn't doing shit,
Yeah.
and that, and if I don't produce enough work or enough money, that means you won't love me.
Mm-hmm.
But where does that come from? Right? That came from me being a kid, 3, 4 years old, right? My mom giving all the attention to my sister, and then me thinking that, oh shit, I gotta do all these other things.
Yeah.
Right? I just wrote about this in my recent newsletter. I remember being 15, just like unable to express my feelings, that I resorted to cutting myself.
Mm.
Right? In hindsight, I know that it's to like get attention, right?
Yeah.
But at that time, I was like just trying. I felt like I needed to feel this release of pain. I just needed to feel something because for a long time, I kind of like shoved down any emotion, any feelings that came up because I didn't have anyone to share those emotions with.
Yeah.
You know. So I always thought that love was this transactional thing.
Mm-hmm.
I always had to do something in order to get it. So growing up, I was always trying to, you know, compete. So I compete or do really well in grades. I tried competing a little bit in track, but then one of my mom's friends was like, "Why are you jogging in a 200-meter race?" When I was like jogging, like running for my life, and then I was like,
Track
fuck
wasn't
this.
for you,
Yeah,
huh?
I was like, fuck this. I was like, fuck this. So I just like turned my attention to like my studies, which I did really well in until I didn't, and then I just shifted the obsession to excel to something else,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like fitness for me for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Mhm.
So it's just like one obsession to the next.
Yeah, because I always think that I have to like prove something in order to get love, but then that isn't necessarily true, right? Because
Yeah.
I would that love that I got out of that transaction would never be enough.
Yeah.
And I got to a point that this isn't working anymore, and then it just moved on. I just switched to a different obsession.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us can like identify with that. I think fighters in particular, like, we get obsessed about fighting because it feels good, it garners us attention, and people treat us nice because we can fight. And then that becomes what we rely on to love ourselves. And then when that gets threatened, right, our whole identity is threatened as well. And so you're carrying around the burden of that at all times, right? If I lose, I'm worthless,
Yeah.
and everybody's going to take their love away from me. If I win, and everybody's going to love from me, but now I got to protect that, So it's
Yeah.
like even when you win, you're afraid,
It's a lose,
you know?
lose.
Yeah, it's a lose-lose. And so you made a distinction once, and I thought it was really interesting. I'm not sure if you authored it or not, but you made a distinction between obsession and discipline. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you want to expand on that, if you can remember it?
I do obsession. I can't really remember
Okay.
it word for word, but
It was something along the lines of, I remember it because it was profound to me. It was something along the lines of that, like, obsession comes from a place of fear, right? And where discipline comes from this place of self-care,
yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I'm disciplined as I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do for myself, even if I don't feel like doing it. Obsession is, I'm going to train even though my body's falling apart because I'm afraid not to.
Yeah. I would say
Something
correct,
like that, right?
correct, yeah. Obsession is, I would say, is definitely run on fear when I am, ignoring all my intuition and
Yeah.
all the feedback that I have from my body because of
Yeah.
this idea that I have to do something, be somewhere, achieve this and that. Otherwise, something bad will happen.
Right.
Whereas discipline, like I said in my how I started kind of like doing the work, right, is making sure that I be still with my head in the morning, like meditation, prayer, because I am powerless on my own. Making sure I get in movement, doesn't matter what kind of movement, whether it's jujitsu or if I'm feeling really depressed and I don't want to do jujitsu or see anyone else, I'll just be in my room moving around. I still make sure that I move my body to
Yeah.
stimulate my mind,
Yeah.
my brain, get the juices flowing or whatever to get me out of this bad state, you know.
Yeah.
What else? I make sure that I learn something good, do something good for myself in terms of mastery. I make sure that I drink water, eat
Yeah.
food, eat good food for me,
Yeah.
because I can't afford to get sick.
Mm.
That's discipline,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. And so now, like, and I watch you work with your clients, and I think one of the brilliant, there's a million trainers out there that do a lot of different things. And I think one of the interesting things that you do that has really helped me in the way that I train and the way that I deal with people is you help people develop a relationship with their body, but also like how to communicate with their body, how to listen to their body, right? Even perhaps times how to tap into stored trauma that's in their body. And it seems like you've used all your life experience on dealing with your own shit, and it's like something that you freely give away to anybody that comes in contact with you and asks you for help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's such a gift. I think you have this like innate ability for people actually like relax around you.
Mm-hmm.
People don't really relax around me, so it's like
No, you're very hard to relax around.
so it's like I watch people relax into your energy
Mm-hmm.
to a point where they can kind of feel what's going on inside them, and get still to it and like kind of unload that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Going back to that day with my mom, I told her about my addiction, and then you know what she said? She was like, Azimah, I've known you. I know you. You're soft. You know, I always known you to be this soft girl. You try to be so, you try to act all hard. You do all these tough things, have muscles, do jujitsu, beat people up, but really you're soft.
You
And then
are.
I was, I was like at the point where I was just like, too fucking like broken up to fight it. And then I just kind of like took it in. And then as I soaked up her words and really like sat with it, maybe that is my gift, that I'm able to be soft and stay gentle and really feel.
Yeah.
Because for like all my life, I've been trying to not feel. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Just blotting out my emotions through whatever obsession in food for a while, and then in like fitness and looking good or competing and getting attention, and then in men, right? And all these different relationships, I've been like blotting out my feelings. But what if I really just leaned into him,
Yeah.
right? What if I really, really just felt my sadness on a deep level? I remember the nights that I was, in Singapore, and you weren't really talking to me because you were in London with different timings, and I really felt this urge to just get, you know, I would. There's almost like this physical craving when you're a recovering like love and sex addict. That physical craving of like, oh shit, I need someone, I need a warm body, just any fucking warm body. But then
Mhm.
I knew that wasn't gonna like help me in any way, right?
Yeah.
So I had to like still walk this path, this path that has no like no actual path,
Mm.
because that's the only thing I got, because I knew the path that I've walked so many times before will lead me to either my own death through suicide, or
Yeah.
an unwanted pregnancy, or STD.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's what the fate of the love and sex addict is
Yeah.
usually, right? So yeah, all I had to do was just like I remember crying in bed, just didn't know what to do. All I did was close my eyes and just like put my hand on, I guess in yoga, where the sacral chakra area is, where you like your womb space, your uterus space, and I actually felt it, like there was like tension, and all I did was like breathe into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I felt better, and it was like a little release. I cried a lot,
Uh-huh.
but that was a
Not
nice like
surprising.
emotional release.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, just magic started happening. Like I didn't have to look outside of me to feel
Mm-hmm.
relief.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like for the first time just witnessing um the trauma in my body and the feelings that I've been like shoving aside
Right.
all my life, and just knowing that, that made my movement practice even stronger.
Right. And I think what happens to people and what you're talking about is like when you think of the worst memories that you have, right? And for anybody listening, if you've been a victim of abuse, sexual abuse, or anything that's been that you don't want to talk about, you don't want to talk about it, you don't even want to think about it. What happens is if you do think about it, the feelings come back, and oftentimes it's like, whoa, that's really uncomfortable, and push that down. I don't want to feel that, right? And what you're doing is like sitting with these feelings, right? And this is a practice that we both use, so I'm familiar with it. But you sit with these feelings, and you sit with them, and go through the uncomfortable, and you let it turn your guts until it's not so bad anymore, and it relaxes. And now you can actually start asking your body what it needs, and you start having conversations with your body, and you listen to it, and it's I think it's awesome how you've tapped into, because I used to tease you about being soft, because you literally cry more than any human being I've ever met. Although now generally you save your tears for when you actually really mean it, and, but you've actually really tapped into allowing yourself to be soft, because that's who you are. And I think and knowing that's what allows people to relax. And for me, it's a perfect balance. Like, I don't think I could be married to somebody that's as hard as I am. You know what I mean? Like, there would be no feelings in the house at all, right? So that would be, so it's like, I often wonder, I'm like, fuck, I think it's incredible that I'm like, I can be married to somebody who is so opposite to me in that regard.
I cry in Finding Nemo.
Yeah, you cry at everything. Yeah, at literally everything. And I find myself crying more since being around you, and I feel like it's okay and it's safe to do that. And that's been quite rewarding. And so, obviously Azimah will be a recurring guest on the show. We like we like talking about the uncomfortable things that we go through and our communication stuff. But now, like, you're not like a fucking scared little girl anymore. No. You're like, I see like a powerful woman.
It's almost like really embracing like the darkness, right?
Yeah.
The soft, being soft and being able to just dive into the darkest parts of me has like, allowed for more light, more of my light to shine, just because I can like dive into the deep and come up
and be honest about it with people, right? I think that's what really attracts people. It's like diving into the darkness is one thing, and I think it's a thing that would help a lot of people. But then reporting back honestly in a way that people can understand it, like, because there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of darkness trapped in them, and they don't have the fucking words to express it, or they're scared to express it, or whatever it is. And then you see somebody so fearlessly like go into those things and then just openly share it with the world, and like people really are taken by that, and I think it's so valuable to people.
Yeah, especially in a world like today where people are mostly driven by fear.
Yeah.
People are afraid of showing their true selves out of fear of being judged or nowadays canceled.
Yeah, right, yeah, being canceled.
So like it's often a breath of fresh air for most people to meet the real versions of them.
Yeah.
Like, no bullshit. This is who I am.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And like through this year, I've been a lot more vocal and talking about some uncomfortable things.
Yeah.
I've talked about like our marriage being interfaith and stuff in my Instagram before, and I've had like warnings from people like, hey, be careful when you're using your voice like that, might make some people angry, you know. But I'm like, I don't fucking care. I want to be around people who support my growth. I want to be around people who inspire me and empower me. I don't want people like dimming my shine, and I want the same for them too. I want people to speak their truth so that they can be around people that are like them.
Right. Okay, and so we're coming to the end, but real quick, tell people where they can find you and like what projects that you have coming out and like, how they can find you, how they can get in touch with you, et cetera, et cetera.
So currently, I'm working on a project I'm really excited about. It's called Body Awareness for BJJ. It's currently in the beta testing phase, but I'm looking to release the full course in a couple of months. I
Mm-hmm.
would say maybe like in 4 months. And I work with some jujitsu people, players, and also lots of movement newbies or beginners in movement. And I enjoy working with moms with families too.
Yeah.
Um, Other than that, you can find me at Muskelcat, so MUSKELKAT on Instagram, and also muskelcat.com. That's my website where you can find my offerings for training. And yeah, and I'm also looking to put out my blog posts. I have newsletters that I put out pretty regularly too, so you can find that through my Instagram.
Okay, and one final question. All right. At this point in your life, what scares you the most? What makes you lose sleep? What is the thing that frightens you to think about the most?
Um, Gosh, this is actually a very difficult question.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, I would say a death of a loved one that is very close to me. Um, I feel like recently I've just, developed a really deep appreciation for the people around me
Mm-hmm.
because, I'm no longer living this like super isolated life in my own shit anymore, and I'm like really appreciating of the people around me. So it would suck if one of them left. I'm less afraid of my own death than I am of someone around me that I love. So
Hmm. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show,
thank you.
and I really enjoyed the conversation. I really like sharing the stuff that we go through together with people. I think it's just honest conversations that are helpful, and yeah, we will be probably checking in with you guys at least once a month or
Yeah,
something like
maybe
that.
we can ask them if like
Yeah.
they have like specific
Yeah.
topics that
Yeah,
we talk about.
feel
There's so
free
much.
to comment on the YouTube or wherever that you watch this. We're on Spotify, Anchor, and YouTube. Comment and let us know what you guys would like us to talk about in future episodes,
Yeah.
and we'd love to hear from you guys. Otherwise, that's it for this week, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed sharing my marriage, my relationship with my wife, and letting you guys get to know how awesome she is. And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.